Utilizing my time tonight to rise to discuss the devastating impacts that illegal marijuana grows and these operations have on our public lands, even private lands as well. As pictured here, this is not an uncommon scene in my district in Northern California, many of the western states, anywhere where people think they can get away with it, where someone may not be paying attention. We see that very often on our federal lands because, honestly, regretfully, they're not managed very well. They're not managed very often. And so we hope to see that turn around under this new administration with new leadership, that U.S. Forest Service lands have more attention paid to them, that they're managed more for with timber harvest, thinning, natures to make the forest healthier. This certainly does not cause a healthier situation for our forest, as you see pictured here, the amount of damage that could come from that. And I'll tell you about a little bit of it here. These illegal grows affect the effects they have on the habitat and the wildlife due to the non-permitted water diversions, extensive grading of the terrain, which people in agriculture and construction have to get permits to do grading, the use of illegal toxicants and pesticides purchased outside of the United States, chemicals, products you can't even use here that haven't been subject to an EPA label process that ag chemicals and household chemicals have to do. These are what are coming in being used in our public lands, poisoning them, poisoning the wildlife, and making it very dangerous for any people that might go in there. According to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, many threatened and endangered species, which were bending over backwards to try and recover, to try and protect, have tested positive for these poisons and other contaminants used at these illegal grow sites. Preliminary tests of game animals, including birds and deer, have also tested positive for these illegal pesticides, again, that are banned by the EPA, not allowed to be used in the United States, haven't been subject to the labeling requirements that are legal materials that we use in agriculture and other things that they've gone through. So it's difficult to understand how the federal government can spend extensive resources going after farmers, ranchers, miners, whoever, for doing legal operations. In agriculture, it might be disking or plowing. In mining, it might be panning for gold. It might be, normal mining operations. So we have people cultivating their land for food. We have people extracting minerals that are for our daily lives, whether it's paving a road, driveway, concrete, whatever it might be. You have people illegally doing these actions. They're the ones that have been, at least until recent months with the new administration, harassed with rules that hadn't even been subject to congressional attention. But at the same time, until recent months, this blatant criminal activity has been allowed to stand. Is it because law enforcement can't go into those areas or not authorized? I know local law enforcement is really interested in doing this, but it's been a hands-off approach by some of our federal officials that have either not wanted to put the resources together or haven't had the wherewithal to put enough of the resources together to go out and enforce on these foreign nationals doing these devastating things to our lands and the danger they cause. What good are these federal laws and statutes if we do not properly enforce the law to protect our public lands? We are protecting, on one hand, again, the wrong people by inaction and criminalizing normal activity of people farming, ranching, mining, etc. The priorities have been backwards. I hope to see a big change in that with the new direction of the new administration. As if the environmental effects are not disturbing enough, the safety of the general public is at risk. Heavily armed drug cartels are using our national forests to engage in large-scale illegal grow operations. You can see the haul on some of the weapons that have been taken from some of the raids that have been successfully done. This is pretty dangerous stuff. Somewhere in the picture, I think, is people that have grenade launching devices, if I'm not mistaken. And so what kind of situation do we have going on where this kind of heavy armament is coming into our forests? And on the other hand, law-abiding, Second Amendment-loving Americans are subject to confiscation, threatening, high cost of multitudes of anti-gun rhetoric that is, again, makes you ask the question, who are we protecting and who are we criminalizing? U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, for example, has been forced to temporarily close refuge units during hunting season to protect the public from stumbling onto an illegal grow that might be guarded heavily by these criminals with these weapons. In 2012, the DEA's Domestic Cannabis Eradication Suppression Report indicated a total of 10,000 or more illegal firearms seized nationwide in raids. This is the people's property. The public should be able to hunt, fish, camp, recreate with their families on it as they wish, safe from this criminal activity. Unfortunately, the number of illegal grow sites on federal lands continues to rise at an alarming rate, even in states that have legalized marijuana for recreational use, like California, regrettably, and Colorado. They still are doing the illegal grows in lands that are in states that have so far legalized marijuana. According to the U.S. Forest Service, in 2016, the Pacific Southwest region saw a 52% increase in marijuana production on Forest Service lands compared to a previous year. So maybe the answer hasn't been in legalizing marijuana grows, which are nuisances in neighborhoods. The activity is still going on. It's still a sought-after market for those people that want to be using it. While these statistics seem staggering, it is believed that the true number of illegal grows on federal lands is actually much higher than that 10,000 figure. Much higher than what has been documented. Much higher than the 52% increase that we're talking about. So with the heavy rainfall the western states saw this winter, thankfully we've gotten the rain, the region is expecting an even higher surge of illegal marijuana production on the people's public lands. The law enforcement capabilities of U.S. Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, Bureau of Land Management are not currently equipped to handle an issue of this high magnitude. These law enforcement officers are doing what they can with the resources allotted and the permission they're allowed by their higher-ups. But we need much more additional means and support to develop a coordinated approach to enforce against these foreign nationals and others that are doing these illegal grows, despite what the public might be wanting with legalized marijuana in their own grows. While confronting the challenges of illegal marijuana cultivation in our national forests is a large undertaking, it's extremely important that we face this head-on. Strong enforcement needs to come from the federal government is supposed to be overseeing these lands. So we're talking about scenes like this right here. This is what's allowed to happen. So while you're criminalizing people doing legal activities, farming, ranching, mining, what have you, for tiny, very narrow, occasional violations, this is what's being fostered out there. Look at this. The trash that's allowed to happen. Empty chemical containers. Everything else involved with the grow, or people camping up there illegally, because the federal government until recently has not seemed to have an interest in enforcing against these. Protecting our public lands from these destructive environmental threats, making sure our national forests are safe for the public's use, for the habitat, for the wildlife. These are of key importance. This is what the public demands that we do as our job in keeping the public safe, lands as well in good stewardship. Much more needs to be done. The Department of Interior, the Department of Agriculture, they have the immediate jurisdiction over these. They need to allow and partner with local law enforcement as well, who knows the lands better than anybody in Washington, D.C. ever would. And I don't need to remind you once again that marijuana is still classified federally as an illegal drug. And so these states, no matter how the voters have been duped, coerced, overwhelmed with dollars at the ballot box and on campaigns, this is still an illegal drug, an illegal activity that's been going on. So I hope what we're hearing from the Department of Justice, we'll be looking really hard at whether this is even a legal activity in states that have been legalizing marijuana and the harmful effects it's going to have on society as this stuff gets more and more powerful, more and more potent, and more available to kids We have a job to do. It all starts right here, taking care of these lands, taking care of the habitat, the environment for wildlife that we all care about, the habitat for people, the water quality. What's going to come out of here as the water runs downstream through this stuff? What's that going to mean for our streams, rivers, lakes, for the water supplies that people draw from here, that the animals draw from here? It's not good. So the federal government needs to take a much stronger approach, whether it's DOJ in concert with Department of Interior and Department of Agriculture, and that local input from local law enforcement and local communities. This could be a very good team operation if we're allowed to do it and we aggressively go after that. I'm seeing the seeds of that in the conversations that are coming out of our agencies here in Washington, D.C. Let's push forward on that, and let's hear from the American public what's happened as well. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back my